Welcome back to What's Your Take? Real talk on leadership and life. I'm your host, Dr. Nikki, the DBA pharmacist and founder of FitBiz Global Solutions. Today's episode is a special co-host spotlight, and we're tackling a topic that hits close to home for so many leaders: burnout. We often talk about innovation and progress, but not enough about the cost of constantly pushing for more. Joining me today is Dr. Darnell Braynen-Blake, a doctor of public health, an accomplished healthcare executive with over 18 years of experience. She's the founder and principal consultant of Pulse Health Global Consulting Network, where she helps organizations redesign workflows, enhance digital strategies, and build healthier, more resilient teams. Over the course of her career, she has seen firsthand how leadership culture shapes the well-being of teams and the overall performance of an organization. Last season, we explored purpose, technology, and wellness. Today, we're unpacking the burnout equation, why it's a leadership issue, and what it takes to lead with wellness in mind, and how we can build systems that actually sustain us. Let's start with the reality. Burnout is everywhere. In healthcare, in leadership, even in entrepreneurship. The expectation to be always on is still glorified. But burnout isn't just an individual issue. It's a systems issue. It affects performance, decision-making, and culture. So let's talk about it. Why do you think so many leaders and teams are running on empty right now, Dr. Nelly?
Hi, Dr. Nikki. Well, thank you so much for having me. Yes, please call me Dr. Nelly. It's shorter than Darnell Braynen-Blake. I love this discussion and what we're about to have today. And your question, is something that we all need to think about. I truly agree that burnout really is everywhere. I think one of the biggest issues is that we've quietly normalized exhaustion as a sign of commitment in the workplace. Being always on, as you stated, somehow became a badge of honor instead of a warning sign, right? A Reuters article that comes to mind, I read it a couple months ago. They completed a recent poll and it discovered that many frontline healthcare workers reported feeling exhausted or underappreciated. More than half of those were actively considering switching jobs by next year, which is, to me, not really so surprising, working in healthcare. And what it really highlighted is that I believe retention risk is tied to burnout, right? So let's go back a little bit when we look at my experience. So in healthcare, especially, I've seen incredibly capable leaders and clinicians carrying more than their roles. They're also carrying the gaps in the system, which are staffing shortages, access barriers, inefficient workflows, even technology that's supposed to help, but often adds friction. Moving forward over time, there's a constant constraint that shows up as a decision fatigue, disengagement, and turnover in the workplace. When I think about it, it's not just anecdotal, what we're discussing. But when we look back at some of the history in a 2025 report from LHH, which is a global talent solutions firm under the Adecco Group, 50% of leaders said that they felt burnt out last year, which is an uptake that's shown up in real leadership turnover. A Forbes article highlighted about 40% of leaders are considering stepping away entirely from a position, a career that they've, been in for most of their lives because of burnout. And what that really tells me is that there is talent risk in the workforce and is not just a stress trend. Moreover, what we don't talk about enough is that burnout isn't a personal failure. It's a systems overload signal, right? When high-performing people are consistently depleted, it usually means the structure around them isn't sustainable. Burnout is what happens when leaders try to run programs on constant execution without planning. I am witness to it. I've experienced it. There are no checkpoints or recovery. When teams don't have clear expectations, what I've found, solid planning or risk mitigation, everything becomes reactive. Leaders end up responding instead of leading. And that's exhausting for everyone involved, including myself once upon a time. So instead of asking, why can't people handle this? I think the better question is, why does the system require this level of sacrifice just to function? And that's really where the burnout equation breaks down to me. And what I'm curious about, right? What are your thoughts? So do you see that same pattern with leaders you work with, where their system itself is quietly becomes the source of burnout?
Yeah, I mean, personally, and I discussed this last season when I lightly touched on burnout. Even in my research, when I was looking at effective leadership strategies regarding implementation of technology, I came across how burnout actually really affects people. Me, when I worked in the information technology frontline years ago, and we had the pandemic, the burnout became evident, and I feel it was based on the switch from being in person to being remote. So me personally, and a lot of my team members, we felt we needed to overperform. I know. We felt we had to overperform because we were now working remotely. Okay. In terms of healthcare leaders, I feel you mentioned system, and I agree, systems problem, because I think it now comes back down to the organizational culture. If you give the impression of, you said that stage, that environment, that you need to overperform in order to seem productive, okay, then this is where your team tends to think I need to do more than I need to. And that's where we end up with burnout. In my research, we came across a lot of, physicians, I should say healthcare providers, who experienced a lot of burnout during the pandemic as well. And we know what happened with COVID-19. People were burnt out because they were overworked. As simple as that. It's true. We've normalized exhaustion as excellence, thinking like that leads to greater productivity, but it doesn't. And that's where, as we say, the equation breaks down. So let's shift into the leadership side of the conversation, because the way we lead directly impacts how our teams feel, whether they feel supported or stretched too thin. This kind of alludes to what we've just been talking about. So in your experience as a public health, strategic healthcare operations and management professional, how did leadership culture affect team well-being?
I absolutely love this question, because leadership culture really sets the temperature of an organization, the emotional temperature. Leadership culture directly shapes well-being. Some of the strongest leaders that I've worked with were purpose-driven and present. They weren't controlling, and really my scientific background, when I think back, reminds me that people are dynamic and not rigid systems. We're influenced by experience, environment, and timing. So when leadership ignore that, well-being suffers. So I believe leadership has to be flexible and human-like. I've worked in environments where leaders were well-intentioned, but almost everything was urgent. When leadership operates in a constant reaction mode, that pressure moves straight through the organization. Everyone feels it. Teams feel like they're not allowed to exhale. And then when leaders model clarity, boundaries, and thoughtful decision-making, it creates psychological safety, which I believe is very necessary as it directly impacts outcomes. I've also seen leaders want results without fully understanding what the work actually requires. When communication becomes one-directional, demands without context, you start to have trust eroding. People stop feeling seen, milestones begin to go uncelebrated, managers are tired, things are overlooked, and emotional intelligence get lost in the push for output. In closing, I feel like strong leadership isn't about being distant or directive. It's about being present, showing up for your team, showing up for your organization, establishing a culture, and truly participating in it and modeling it. When leaders model that, I do believe that teams will feel more supported and perform better. And that's the kind of culture that doesn't just protect well-being, but it does and it should strengthen performance based on my experience.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You touched on some good points there. Communication. Yeah. Communication and being present. That's what's most important to impact any team, especially when you're talking about wellness, because the team sees you as the leader and they normally will follow you. And that brings us into things like transformational leadership. You know, we're expected to, as leaders, we're expected to lead the team in the direction we want them to go. You know, that's such a powerful point. Sometimes we have to unlearn hustle cultures to make space for healthy leadership. So what helped you personally start redefining success without burnout?
Redefining success really became a non-negotiable for me, right? After becoming a mom. Yeah. After having 2 active boys, being a wife, that particular season of my life was one of the most fulfilling times, and I truly wanted to actually be present for it. So when my second son started first grade and I returned to work as an office manager, I had to relearn balance really quickly. I realized that being constantly busy didn't mean I was being effective, and it definitely didn't mean I was being successful. So redefining that, I had to reconsider, go back to the drawing board, and later on in my career, my work in project and program management really started to shape how I thought about leadership as well. In any well-run program, you plan, execute, pause to assess what's going on, and then you adjust appropriately, right? If you skip that pause, things break. And so that's when it clicked for me that productivity without sustainability is short-term output. And I had to relearn, you just said it earlier, the hustle culture, especially the belief that rest meant falling behind, which I've heard it over and time again, having conversations with some of my closest friends. They're on vacation. They do not want to take a break. They're looking at emails, and I'm guilty of it as well, throughout my career. But there came a point in time where it's not falling behind. I started measuring success differently. The same way I would a program, we have to look at it where were we meeting realistic timelines, right? Were outcomes improving? Were risks being managed? And were people being supported, including myself? And I became more intentional about celebrating my progress, celebrating the progress of the team. So completing phases, hitting those milestones, finishing my doctorate in public health, closing initiatives, closing programs. In project management, you don't wait until the very end to acknowledge progress, and leadership shouldn't be any different. My belief is that shift really shaped how I lead today, including the systems focused work I do through Pulse Health Global Consulting Network, where I believe with my team and others that we have to focus on building structures that support people instead of draining them.
Absolutely. And you touched on some good points there. I wanted to focus on the part about non-negotiables and people reading emails on vacation. We all are guilty of that. But I do remember in one of my leadership trainings in the past, one of the things that we were encouraged to do is have that discussion with your direct leader. That discussion about, hey, eating a work-life balance. Okay, one of the things that I have been doing is having my do not disturb. It's one of those things I do because people can call you at any time. So from the time I put that on my phone, that's what I do. So that do not disturb goes in and out no matter what. And like I've told my family, if you want to reach me, you probably have to ring twice because it's already set, and it's just to avoid, in
that's
the past.
For emergencies only, right?
Emergencies only. Because in the past, your leader would be calling you at times or send you text. So you have to have a cutoff. Okay. It's very important. That's for me, a non-negotiable. That's how I would most likely go about dealing with preventing burnout. Okay. So it's one thing to tell people to prioritize wellness, but living it as a leader takes work. And we've talked about some personal non-negotiables for self-care. So now that you've stepped into entrepreneurship, right? What are your non-negotiables for self-care or balance now that you are the boss?
Hey, now I have to think about this, right? For myself, but no. Listen, entrepreneurship will test every boundary you do not protect. And for me, wellness can't be optional. It has to be designed. Um, I have to think about it and follow through. So I'm many things outside of work. I'm a mom, wife, daughter, a sister, a friend, and those roles also matter deeply to me. But I've also learned that if I fail myself, I fail my health, and eventually my body breaks down. And coming from a Christian background, I believe and I live of the ideology that my body is my temple, and I have to treat it that way. So my non-negotiables are simple but intentional, right? Protected thinking time. Even something as basic as blocking focus time and lunch on my calendar. That's what I do. And I have a clear start and stop points to my day. I am also very mindful about what I say yes to. Truly, alignment matters. I believe in divine alignment. If the work doesn't connect to my purpose, to the work that we're doing, to following through or have impact, it's going to cost me, it's going to cost us more than it gives.
Absolutely.
So practically speaking, I prioritize self-care, real self-care. So I have chiropractic care, massages, actually using that PTO time, right? And fully disconnecting from work during that time, really deactivating matters. I think you mentioned do not disturb. My phone goes into focus mode. So early in the mornings and late at night, I'm able to get that sleep that I need. I wear my Apple Watch to kind of track and see what's going on. So at this stage in life, sleep isn't a luxury. It's essential for my well-being and productivity. I want to wake up. I want to feel refreshed. I want to be productive in my day. And then when I'm with my family and friends, I think this is important too, I'm present. The same focus I give to my work, I give to others. It's respectful. Respectful to them and it's respectful to myself. That balance is what allows me to lead clearly, consistently, and sustainably, and then show up for myself and others.
But those are some salient points. I love that because modeling wellness isn't about perfection. It's about presence and boundaries. And in terms of self-care and being an entrepreneur, what is good is that I started that mentality when I was still an employee of somebody else, in terms of setting those boundaries, having a nice work-life balance. Once again, believing your body is a temple from a Christian perspective. And so for me, I continue that same sort of focus mentality. And in terms of signing up for things that does not align with your goals, that is a definite situation because, having background as a pharmacist, and having that IT perspective, etc. Yeah, people throw things at you all the time. Oh, can you do this? Can you do that? And I'm thinking, I'm trying to run a business here. So I have to ensure that whatever is thrown in my direction, I'm okay with. And you're right, sometimes it's not worth it. So yes, we do have to turn down some things that people would think are opportunities for the better good of our own company. So when leaders take care of themselves, they give their teams permission to do the same. Okay. So we're going to talk about sustainability because long-term leadership requires long-term energy. So what systems, habits, or rituals have actually helped you maintain balance over time? And for the leaders listening right now, how can they begin modeling wellness without sacrificing outcomes or performance? So you could do one at a time or just lump them in together.
Okay, yeah, great question. The biggest shift for me has been reducing unnecessary decision making. So, one way that we can look at this, having clear workflows, realistic timelines, and then defined roles. Um, Truly, chaos is exhausting, while structure can be way more supportive in our day-to-day lives throughout our work. So that's where my project and program management background really comes in again. In any well-run program, you plan, execute, pause to assess, and adjust. And when leaders skip that pause, everything turns into firefighting. We're always putting out fires. There's no break. There's no time to breathe. I also think in rhythms instead of rigid balance. Some seasons require more intensity, but they have to be followed by recovery. Otherwise, burnout is inevitable. That's why I'm intentional about boundaries and flexibility, whether that's protective focus time, like I mentioned earlier, maintaining realistic schedules, or just rethinking how and when work gets done. We sometimes need to reduce things like those unnecessary commute time or constant interruptions that actually improves efficiency and morale within our organization and for our team members. For me, sustainability comes from honoring that cycle and then planning ahead, building in the recovery, taking breaks as necessary. After you work hard all month, there's a 3-day weekend, take that recovery break. And creating systems that support both outcomes and people. So with leaders, modeling wellness without sacrificing outcomes. Wellness and performance, they're really not truly opposites, right? They're directly connected. In my experience, leaders can model wellness by being intentional. And that starts with setting realistic expectation, prioritizing what actually moves the work forward, and communicating clearly so their teams aren't operating in constant ambiguity. Environment matters too. So not just physical space, but that emotional space. When workspaces feel welcoming, when there's intentional team building, and when leaders acknowledge effort, I believe trust and morale will go up. I've also constantly seen that when people understand the why are we doing this? Why is this necessary? Etc. They have the right tools and they begin to feel supported, and then you see performance improve. You get better focus, better decision making, and more consistent outcomes begin to come about. And then sustainable leadership, in closing, isn't about just slowing down, right? It's about pacing with intention. So success is repeatable, and then teams aren't burnt out in the process.
Absolutely. Once again, excellent points. Some habits that, simple habits, for example, that I do. I get up in the morning, I have my tea or coffee. Okay. That's something I've been doing forever. And now, ever since working remotely, being an entrepreneur, etc., I still do the same thing. Okay. It may or may not be working. I feel it does. Okay. So simple little habits like that. Meditation is something one would want to get more involved in. Okay. Trusting God to guide you in your decision making. Sometimes things don't work out. Let it be. Okay. There's a reason. You might not have gotten that project. Just trusting in God, that will help you. In terms of wellness without sacrificing outcome or performance, you make good points there as well. There's really not a huge difference between those two things. In terms of a few actionable steps, it's things that we have already discussed. Okay. Burnout prevention. Give yourself focus time, whether you're a leader, an employee, a business owner. Make sure you have some time carved out. With that, put on your do not disturb. If it's important, they will reach you still. It's okay. All right. Have that conversation. If you're an employee, have that conversation with your boss. Talk about a work-life balance. I remember starting in IT several years ago. And, the boss I had at that time was very active. They want everything done now, right? I had to have the conversation and be like, you know what? I need to have a good work-life balance. And they will understand. Once you believe in it, you can now petition for yourself and you will get what you're asking for. Okay. Make sure you have your non-negotiables and you set your boundaries. These will protect you. And you could actually take those tips, not just in the workplace, but in life. Okay. Do you have any last closing thoughts you want to share, or actionable tips or examples for the listeners? Dr. Nelly.
Yes. So I want to piggyback on what you said earlier about, your focus time and having that discussion with your boss or manager. And, it just dawned upon me, we live in a time where there's a lot of virtual meetings. So there's teams and things are managed, within Teams or Outlook. And I think having that discussion and setting clear expectations with your manager is important early, having that discussion early. And then with that expectation, I think as a leader, we have to be so careful not to micromanage looking at teams and some of these tools that were meant to help us to cause burnout for your employee or yourself, right? We cannot expect people to run on fumes all day. So there is time that should be carved out for breaks. There's time that should be carved out for focus time, whether it's researching, reading, planning. I think that's very important. So as a leader, we have to be very careful how we manage some of these tools. But just in closing, I believe this topic is much needed. And we have to look at wellness and leadership by choosing to have clarity, setting boundaries, and making it purposeful. I love something Mel Robbins that I follow once said, and she said that you can't wait to feel motivated or aligned before you take care of yourself. You have to choose it first, even when it feels small or uncomfortable. So what that truly says to me, and what we consider is, you don't wait to feel ready. You choose it. It's being present, not just productive, designing systems that support people, and protecting energy as a responsibility, not a luxury. And then finally, honestly, when leaders are fulfilled and aligned, it shows. When people are fulfilled and aligned, it shows. And that energy translates into a stronger work organizational culture, better decisions, and real results. And in my belief, without burnout, which is so important.
Absolutely. And I like how you touched on the micromanaging. It comes back down to, and I probably discussed this in a previous episode, managers versus leaders. Okay. A good leader won't micromanage you. No, they won't. In my experience of being a preceptor, training upcoming pharmacists, being a mentor to pharmacy students, leading teams in pharmacy and in healthcare overall, when you give people a bit of independence and show them that you believe in them, they will outperform anyone who's being micromanaged. And that's what leaders need to show other non-leaders how it's done. And I think that's just like your transformational leadership type of quality. Yeah, this has been a great reminder that sustainability isn't about slowing down. It's about pacing ourselves so that we can lead with purpose for the long haul. And as you say, this is a much needed conversation. It's been honest. I'm happy that we were able to touch on a few topics today. What I like and love about today's discussion is how it reframes wellness as a leadership skill, right? Not as a luxury. It's something that I've talked about before, and it's something we need to talk about more. Because when leaders protect their energy and lead with intention, they create space for others to thrive as well. So here's my question for you, listeners. What does wellness and leadership look like for you? I'd love to hear your take. Share your thoughts or burnout recovery tips with us on Instagram at fitbiz.solutions, or tag the show using the hashtag What's Your Take podcast. Thank you to Dr. Darnell Braynen-Blake for co-hosting this conversation. You can connect with her on LinkedIn and Facebook at Pulse Health Global Consulting Network, or Instagram at Pulse Health GCN, or through her website, pulsehealthgcn.com. As we continue these conversations, we're quietly imagining new spaces beyond the podcast, where leaders can pause, reflect, and reconnect with wellness in real time. When the moment is right, you will hear it here first. And as always, you can join our community at fitbizsolutions.com, on social, Instagram at fitbiz.solutions, Facebook at fitbizsolutions, and YouTube at fitbizsolutions media. New episodes drop every Thursday, and next time, we'll continue exploring what it means to lead with purpose, wellness, and innovation. Until then, lead well, rest often, and always keep asking, what's your take?